The air smelled of roses, money, and control. I stood at the edge of the marble steps, watching valets glide in pressed suits and women descend from cars like falling jewels. My sister's wedding, her grand $250 cathedral to perfection, unfolded in golden light. And me, the uninvited ghost who still made the guest list out of pity. She had texted me earlier. "Stay in the back row, please. It's better for photos." I smiled at the irony. Better for photos, worse for family. Inside, chandeliers hummed above 1,000 polished smiles, each reflection reminding me how far I'd fallen from her curated orbit. But somewhere beneath the music and the clinking glasses, something coiled in me. A quiet vow that tonight she'd remember exactly who she'd told to stand in the shadows. When we were children, she wore ribbons, and I wore second-hand dresses. Every photo album told the same story. She in center frame, me in the edge blur. It wasn't jealousy, it was habit. Our parents built her world from light, and I learned to live in its shadow. But tonight, beneath layers of lace and champagne, I could see it. The same glint she had when she stole my toy piano at age 6, and smiled as if the theft were love. The stage was hers again. Only this time, she didn't know the spotlight was already burning. The makeup room smelled like hairspray and tension. I entered quietly, pretending to deliver a forgotten perfume. She didn't look up, just adjusted her veil with that same practiced grace. "Don't cause a scene tonight," she murmured, like a warning wrapped in sugar. I smiled. Why would I? Her eyes met mine through the mirror, a flicker of something, fear recognition, before vanishing beneath her flawless smile. For the first time, I saw the crack in her porcelain, and it felt like a breath after drowning. Outside, laughter floated like perfume, sweet but suffocating. I caught the bridesmaids whispering, glancing at my thrifted shoes. One giggled, "She's brave to show up like that." Another added, "Maybe it's charity seating." I pretended not to hear, but inside every word etched itself into steel. Revenge doesn't always start with rage. Sometimes it begins with a smile held too long. As the band rehearsed inside, I sat alone beneath the magnolia tree. The wind carried fragments of her vows, practiced and perfect. My hands shook, not with sadness, but with awakening. Every silence had led me here. They wanted me in the back row. Fine. Let them look away for now. Because when the music stops, every eye in this cathedral will turn, and they'll finally see me. They herded guests into velvet rows like royalty seating for judgment. My name wasn't on any card, yet somehow there it was. Row G, seat 18. The back row, perfectly aligned with the exit. Every chair ahead shimmered with sequins, designer perfume clouding the air. My sister glided past, radiant and hollow, eyes flicking through me like I was decor. Perfect symmetry, someone whispered. I almost laughed. They'd spent $250,000 building a stage for a fairy tale, never noticing the shadows gathering at its edge. Beneath the cathedral's dome, I folded my hands, let the organ swell, and whispered to myself, "Let it play." The vows began like a movie script. Lines rehearsed for months, gestures choreographed to perfection. My mother dabbed her eyes with lace, never once looking back. I stared at her profile, wondering if she felt the same relief she always did when I stayed quiet. The groom said, "I promise to protect you forever," and I almost smiled. Protection. Such a fragile promise in families like ours. I could feel my pulse sensing with the organ. Behind every forever, there was always a condition. When the priest asked for blessings, a voice behind me whispered, "She's the sister, right? The one who didn't make it." The words slid through my spine like cold glass. I didn't turn. I didn't need to. I'd lived a lifetime of people mistaking silence for failure. But something in me tightened, coiled. The faintest smile tugged at my lips. Not bitterness, something purer. The kind of calm that precedes storms. As they exchanged rings, I felt something shift. The way sunlight pierced through the cathedral's high window, landing directly on me. For a heartbeat, I was visible. The bride's gaze caught mine mid-vow, faltering just enough for me to notice. I didn't smile. I just held her stare, steady, silent. The same way I used to when she took what wasn't hers and dared me to cry. This time, I didn't blink. When the choir rose for the final hymn, I slipped my phone from my clutch. Screen dimmed to black. My reflection stared back, half lit by stained glass, half lost to shadow. They wanted me hidden. They never said I couldn't watch. One silent tap, and the record light blinked alive. I aimed it toward the altar, capturing every tremble behind perfection. The doors opened as applause erupted, but I stayed seated. The lens caught everything. My own small, patient revolution had begun. The ballroom glittered like a promise no one could keep. Gold drapes, champagne towers, and laughter so loud it drowned the truth. I stood at the edge, the forgotten sister in borrowed heels, watching the dance of power and illusion. Every toast, every camera flash built a temple around her perfection. I didn't belong in their frame. And that was precisely the point. They thought humiliation could be disguised as etiquette, that silence was acceptance. But I'd learned something in the shadows. Patience makes the perfect weapon. The orchestra strings quivered like nerves on the brink. Somewhere between the laughter and the clinking of glasses, I smiled. Tonight, I wouldn't need to speak for anyone to hear me. He found me by the bar, a family friend I hadn't seen in years. His face had aged softly, but his eyes still held the same warmth. "You always had the truest voice," he said, glass in hand. For a second, the noise faded. His kindness felt foreign, almost intrusive. "They never wanted truth," I replied. He nodded, gaze drifting toward the head table. "Then, tonight, let them choke on it." His words hit harder than champagne. I looked back at my reflection in the silver ice bucket and saw a woman I almost recognized. Steady, deliberate, waiting. The microphone clicked, and my sister stood, champagne glass raised, smile dazzling and hollow. "To family," she began, "and to those who've supported us." Even when they couldn't keep up, laughter rippled. The spotlight grazed my face uninvited. I didn't flinch. I lifted my glass, mimicking her grace, but my eyes didn't blink. In that silence between applause, I saw her realize the difference between cruelty and control. The crowd clapped, unaware they'd just witnessed her final unopposed performance. When laughter faded, I set my glass down, felt the condensation cling to my skin. Around me, people swayed in blissful ignorance, spinning under chandeliers like puppets with diamond strings. I watched her, the perfect bride, float between tables, shaking hands, kissing cheeks, basking in her own illusion. She'd built this empire on the silence of others. Mine had just expired. My pulse slowed, my mind sharpened. The first chord of the band's next song bled into air like a countdown. The drive slipped into my palm as smoothly as a confession. No words, just a glance exchanged across the tablecloth. It was small, silver, unassuming, but heavy with consequence. "It's all there," the voice whispered. "Every lie, every deal." My heart didn't race. It slowed. The music swelled, and I tucked the device into my clutch, pressing it against my ribs like a heartbeat. I looked toward the stage, where her laughter echoed under crystal light, and whispered to no one in particular, "Let the truth dance too." It began with silence, the kind that cracks through celebration like lightning through silk. The band's rhythm stuttered mid-song, violins choking into static. For a moment, everyone froze. Glasses halfway raised, laughter half-born. I stood watching the confusion ripple outward from the stage like water disturbed. My sister turned sharply, irritation already painting her perfect features. She gestured to the musicians as if control were still hers to command. But the lights dimmed, and the music died completely. Somewhere behind me, a voice whispered, "What's happening?" I already knew. This was the sound of the world, rearranging itself. Mork! The lead wall flickered once, twice, and then truth began to breathe in pixels. Laughter from hours earlier caught behind dressing room doors. The bride's voice, sharp, venomous. "As long as she stays invisible, I'm fine." Gasps spread like wildfire. My sister's face drained of its practiced serenity, her hand frozen around the microphone. I watched the footage unravel. Her lies, her cruelty, each frame peeling back the lacquer she'd built her empire upon. The music was gone. Only her own words played now, echoing in the cathedral of her ambition. Gasps turned to whispers, whispers into roars. The groom's smile disintegrated as new clips emerged, texts, receipts, betrayal stitched together with surgical precision. "Who did this?" someone shouted, but the room had already turned. The bride lunged toward the screen, hands trembling, but the images wouldn't stop. Her laughter, cruel and familiar, echoed through surround sound until even the chandeliers seemed to recoil. I stayed where I was, one step behind the chaos, the calm in its storm. Every humiliation I'd swallowed now bloomed across that gilded wall. Retribution didn't need applause. It only needed silence loud enough to hear a heart break. The microphone fell from her hand, the sound splitting the silence. "Who would do this?" she demanded, voice shaking, reaching for me like an anchor in a flood. For a heartbeat, I almost pitied her. Almost. But then I remembered the years, the small cuts that never healed. I rose slowly. Every head turned as if gravity itself had shifted. I didn't say a word. My silence was the answer. She looked at me, truly looked, for the first time in years. The music of her empire had stopped, and the only rhythm left was the echo of her own ruin. I walked forward. Not fast, not triumphant, just steady. The crowd parted without a word, a slow tide of sequins and fear. She tried to speak, but her voice broke into fragments. I stopped only once, just beside her fallen veil. It glimmered faintly under the broken light, a relic of something too fragile to last. I picked it up, laid it gently on the table, and turned toward the door. Behind me, the room began to hum again, people whispering, cameras flashing. But I didn't look back. Some endings don't need to be watched. Chaos sounded almost holy. The groom's voice thundered through the ballroom, echoing against marble and glass. "How long?" he demanded. "How much of this is true?" His eyes darted between her and the screen, still flashing frozen lies. The bride stammered, mascara streaking down her face like war paint. I stood at the periphery, no longer invisible, just present. Finally real. Truth didn't need a narrator. It simply played itself. Their love story, built on edits and filters, now collapsed beneath the weight of honesty. For the first time in years, I didn't feel small. I felt exact. My parents moved like ghosts, father shouting orders to kill the feed, mother clutching pearls as if morality could be squeezed from them. "End this," she cried. But you can't unsee truth once it's spoken in light. I watched her panic, the same woman who once told me to behave at every family event. Behave meant disappear. Behave meant accept. I had obeyed for decades. Tonight, the word died. I turned away from her trembling hands, feeling the tremor of release ripple through me like the first note of a song that finally belonged to me. She found me in the doorway, desperation bleeding into rage. "You did this!" she hissed, voice cracking on every syllable. I didn't move. Her heels clicked across marble like gunfire. "After everything I gave you." The irony almost made me laugh. "You didn't give," I said softly. "You took." The silence that followed was sharper than any scream. The crowd watched, hungry and horrified. Two sisters, one gilded, one ghosted, now both stripped of pretense. Her breath came ragged. You ruined me. I met her eyes. No, you recorded yourself. We stood inches apart, and for the first time, she looked small. Why couldn't you just be happy for me? She whispered. The question felt almost childlike, and for a fleeting second, I saw the sister who once held my hand at night when thunder scared me. I said, until you decided I was a prop in your story. Her mouth trembled. You destroyed everything. I leaned closer, my voice barely breath. No, I freed it. Her tears fell, soft and slow, like surrender. And just like that, her empire of control crumbled, not with fire, but with forgiveness she couldn't return. I stepped into the night, the sound of chaos fading behind me, replaced by ocean wind and silence. The veil still glimmered faintly in my clutch, a relic of the night's undoing. I looked back once, just enough to see the ballroom lights dimming, their golden lie finally gone. For years, I believed revenge meant destruction. But standing beneath the stars, I understood. Revenge was reclamation, taking back the version of yourself they taught you to hide. I let the veil drift into the wind, its lace catching moonlight before vanishing. Tonight, I wasn't her shadow anymore. I was my own light. Morning came like an apology that arrived too late. Headlines bloomed across every social feed. $250K. Wedding erupts in scandal. My sister's face, once airbrushed perfection, now frozen mid-panic, shared and dissected by strangers. I sat by my window, coffee cooling untouched, watching the world do what it always does, devour spectacle. But this wasn't vengeance anymore. It was aftermath, the silence following the explosion. I didn't smile or gloat. I just breathed, slow and steady. For once, I wasn't hiding in someone else's story. I was writing my own. Across town, the fortress cracked. Paparazzi lined her gate. Her publicist issued apologies that tasted like smoke. They called it a misunderstanding, but truth had already carved its initials into her reputation. She stayed inside, curtains drawn, drowning in the same silence she once prescribed me. I didn't need to see it to know. The house felt smaller now, the mirrors unkind. For every lie she built, there was a window waiting to expose it. Days later, I found myself in a quiet cafe by the waterfront. No cameras, no whispers, just the gentle percussion of cups on saucers. I read, I wrote, I existed. When the waiter asked if I wanted more sugar, I smiled without hesitation. For the first time, my voice didn't tremble. Freedom doesn't announce itself. It hums quietly in the corner of peace. I didn't destroy her. I simply stopped letting her define the edges of me. That night I dreamt in flashbacks. The small cruelties, the forced smiles, the countless times I'd swallowed my voice to keep peace. Each memory replayed not as pain, but as proof. Proof that endurance was never weakness. Every slight, every dismissal had trained me for this quiet kind of power. I woke before dawn, the world still asleep, and realized forgiveness didn't mean forgetting. It meant refusing to live beneath someone else's version of you ever again. The call came just after sunrise. My mother's voice trembled through static. "I'm sorry," she said, the words fragile, foreign, "for not seeing you." I didn't answer right away. The wind moved through the open window, gentle, forgiving. "I know," I whispered. "You do now." We said nothing more, but in that silence, generations of blindness began to heal. The world outside glowed soft, with possibility. For the first time, I believed peace wasn't the absence of conflict. It was the choice to stop inheriting it. A year later, The venue was a ruin of beauty. Vines curling over marble, petals long turned to dust. The world had moved on, as it always does. No more headlines, no more whispers, just quiet. I parked by the cliffside and walked toward the abandoned estate, the same one that had once swallowed my voice whole. The air was heavy with the scent of salt and forgotten promises. Every echo of laughter from that night had vanished, leaving behind the low hum of wind through broken windows. I wasn't here for her anymore. I was here to bury the ghost that used to be me. The doors moaned open, their hinges still remembering the weight of that night. I stepped inside, tracing the outlines of chandeliers that no longer sparkled. My reflection appeared faintly in a cracked mirror. Different now. Not polished, not performative, just whole. I smiled, small and real. I no longer needed revenge. I had clarity. The kind that comes when you stop rehearsing pain and start living truth. In the chapel, pews lay coated with dust, but the altar still shimmered faintly beneath a shard of sunlight. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out the wedding invitation. Its gold lettering dulled, the edges worn. It once told me where I belonged. I laid it gently on the altar, the same way I'd once laid down my silence. The air felt lighter. A single petal fell from the rafters, landing beside the card like punctuation. The story was done. I walked back through the garden, my footsteps quiet over the same stones that once echoed with music. The wind brushed my hair, whispering fragments of the past. A voiceover might have said something poetic about justice or fate, but the truth was simpler. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is walk away, without bitterness, without applause. Just leave the story where it ended, and let the silence speak for you. The sun broke over the horizon as I reached the cliffs. The sea below shimmered like liquid glass, endless and forgiving. I stood there, breathing in salt and light of the past dissolve with every... No music, no audience, just the sound of truth existing quietly. I turned once, looked toward the estate one final time, then faced forward. The road curved toward the sunrise, and I followed, lighter, unnamed, free.